whereas the Accomack County School Board has convened a closed meeting on this date pursuant to the affirmative record vote and in accordance with the provisions of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act, whereas section 2.1-3771D, the Code of Virginia requires the certification by this school board that such closed meeting was conducted in conformity with Virginia law. Now therefore be resolved that Accomack County School Board hereby certifies that to the best of each member's knowledge, 1, only public business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements by Virginia law are discussed, and 2, only such public business matters as were identified in the motion on which the closed meeting was convened were heard, discussed, or considered. Second.
Motion is second to certify the closed meeting. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Can we stand and pledge the flag? Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We will now observe a moment of silence. May I ask the clerk to call roll, please?
Present. Present. Here.
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 Present.
And before we go any further, please, everyone, if you haven't already, please silence your cell phones. And I would like to welcome Dr. Moore to her second day of work and her first school board meeting. Is there a motion to approve the minutes from the last meeting?
Madam Chair, I move that we approve the minutes as were presented and typed up as presented. Second.
Motion is second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Minutes are approved. There is a second reading for the professional support staff leaves of absences.
Madam Chair, I got some questions.
Okay.
So I guess I'm not really liking this as far as why do they have to take 2 hours if they only need, say, an hour or 30 minutes to, why do they have to take that much of their meeting?
Yes, Ms. Owen, would you like to address that, please?
As it was told to me, currently the policy said that 10-month employees have to take quarter day increments and 12-month employees can take it by the hour. So our new ERP, we have to have leave reported by the dailies, by the day. So we also did not feel that it was fair that 10-month employees had to take quarter day increments and 12-month employees could take hourly increments. So we switched it to be uniform to quarter day increments because that fits into having leave reported in days rather than in hours.
Can we talk to the people who developed this ERP system that how we can try to tweak that together? I just feel like people are losing a lot of their PTO time and they only need to take an hour. Then they have to take additional hour because they got to find coverage.
It's already in the policy that 10-month employees, as far as finding coverage, 10-month employees are the policy to take quarter day leave. So this is, the change is only for 12 months.
I understand that. Me as a board, I think we need to look at it for everybody. We need to just, we need to look at this policy, possibly change it. That's just my opinion. I'll never understand.
So what would you want us to look at, hour increments? then you're, you know.
Well, let's make it, should we put it to a vote, want to make a motion?
I think we should table this and look at this a little more, to see if we can do a 30-minute or 60-minute increments.
So,
Are you, is that,
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
It is very difficult for the payroll department to keep track of 30-minute increments a week. You'd be having decimal spaces out by your days, it would be difficult for them to be tracked. You're not supposed to take 30 minutes a week now.
What I'm saying, maybe we should try to change it, I don't see how you just do from 0.5 to 30 versus 1.0 or 2.0. I mean, I just don't understand the system. I don't see why we couldn't reach out to these people and see, hey, how can we?
We have discussed this at length, and this was the recommendation. This is the reason why this policy is coming before the board.
there is a motion, is there a second?
Second.
So there is a motion and a second to table this to the next meeting for a third reading and have, this only and ERP team investigate further. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Raise your hand if you're a nay. So the motion to table has failed.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I move that we adopt policy, at part 101, UCD-R.
Motion is second to adopt policy, as it's written. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
No people raise your hand, please. 6 to 3, motion passes. School boards. Mr. Patterson.
Good evening. And this is go it up there. Okay. And well, thank you for being down here at Pungoteague. I guess the last public meeting at the school for the year. And you saved the best for last because we're definitely working to try to be the best we can. I'm going to show you some data tonight in just a second here, in which we'll be kind of in a unique position of presenting you data from last year, like most of the schools have probably done, but also we've got the data from this year. So it's going to give you, I think, a nice little comparison. And some of it surprised me a little bit how close it is. Of course, I'll introduce to you Ms. Payne, my wonderful assistant principal, and the energy of the school that I just struggle to keep up with. And of course, we've got also some parents and teachers back here that have come to represent Girls on the Run, which Ms. Payne will be presenting to you after I'm finished with the boring stuff. So let's hit the first slide here. These are our scores from last year, and as you can see with the raw scores, this is the comparative from the last 5 years. You actually might have seen this slide before because I used it the last time I presented to you. And you kind of see coming out of COVID the rise, the steady rise that we've had across the board. And if you go to the next slide, thank you, ma'am. And the way, really the two columns that I want you to look at are the one right in the middle that says raw pass rate, and then the final pass rate. So the raw pass rate, that's when students pass and there's no exemptions involved. There's all sorts of different ways that you have to manipulate this stuff. For instance, under the old rules, the 11th semester rule for students as English language learners who had come here, they had to be here for 11 semesters before they started counting as part of the SOL score. If they failed, they were exempt. So that, by the way, has gone to a 3-semester rule as of this year. A lot of changes. So The raw pass rate gives you just an idea of exactly, just cut and dry, who passed, who failed. And then there's a lot of different things put in, and it gets over to, along with the growth rate, which is the big thing that's happened the last couple of years. And you see the scores over on the far right, in which we were at an 87.8% pass rate for reading, 90.4% pass rate for math, and a 71.6% pass rate for science, and a 77.4% pass rate for Virginia studies. The science doesn't have all the exemptions the other areas have. Science and Virginia studies. Virginia studies are continuing to track. It doesn't really matter towards accreditation, but the science is one of those that I know you've probably been exposed to some of the problems in the science area for a lot of the schools. And that's because they don't have any of those manipulations really. They're not as concerned if, like English language learner, for instance, whether or not it's not language based, so there's not as many manipulations there. Okay, so now they're changing on us, and we're still learning, and let's go to the next group of scores. By the way, our pass scores based on the old system, this is compared to 3 and 4 years ago, before the growth formula came along, would have been all passing basically in all SOL areas according to the old way that we did it. So those are the scores without the growth factor. That was for last year. This year, Ms. Farrell and I wish she was here. I'd argue with her some more, but we got into kind of an argument. It's much different. The system's much different. She said, "Well, Brian, I'm really not seeing a lot of differences. It's right down to the percentage points." And sure enough, when I ran it, she's right, and that's why she's my director and I'm not hers. But she was correct. It's very close. The raw pass scores for the school are very similar, and you really just need to look at the far right there. Those are the current scores for Pungoteague Elementary School without any of the growth factors. So it's very similar. Some areas are a little higher, some areas are a little bit lower, but very similar to those raw scores from 2 years ago under the old system. Now, it's my understanding we won't know the growth factor this time around until hopefully sometime in the summer, but I've even heard September has been thrown out there. I will tell you, and I don't know how prepared the school board has been on the new accreditation system, but from everything I'm calculating, even under their percentage points and how much each one counts for, whether they're a fail, a pass, or a pass advance, we are right where we need to be on track. I don't see us, I made these words, I gotta be careful what I say, but I don't see us really having to worry about being on track in the end. Our attendance is way up. I think if all goes well to the end of the year, we might be at about 97% or above. Proper attendance, 3% chronic absenteeism. Our EL population had 30 out of 33 students who made proper growth. So these are all great things attributed to having great teachers, and I appreciate them every day. So we're right on track, and we will probably get distinguished, but again, we'll be happy at this point with this new system as we learn it. We don't know the growth though, that's the thing. We don't know what that looks like, and that's why I'm not going to stand up here and then have mud on my face if something doesn't go right. Also want to let you know, the behavior, I won't really go into it. I checked with the numbers. We're at about 318 referrals this year. We were at 360 at the end of this particular year. So we're kind of still in that range. It's not too bad. Physical aggression, especially the behaviors of the younger children, continues to be a major area of focus. I think Mrs. Gordon is probably continue to give you updates on that trend, but it is still a trend that is there. Very few problems with the ages or grades 3 through 4, really, which is a real reversal of how it used to be. And then the last slide, I just want to remind you that we're under the Ron Clark House system. It's a big thing down here. It's fully implemented now. You look around the gym and you see the banners of the different houses that kids are selected into through the selection wheel, and each house really pushes certain values And it's a friendly competition where we all root for each other, and it's really helping to build, I think, a positive culture and have a reference point for talking to kids about what behaviors should be, and I think it's reflective of everything else that you see with the scores and with the behavior where it is. So we're real proud of it, real proud of the staff, love supporting, love working for them. Want to, before I introduce you to Ms. Payne, and of course I'm here for any questions if you have any. Do you have any questions, school board members?
With regard to the disciplines, how are things broadly around IT related stuff from both things that nature, using the internet, any thoughts? I'm assuming they fall in the other category.
As far as discipline, it's very few, very few. You might have an occasional abuse of a phone or an electronic device. I think I've probably dealt with 4 inappropriate access, usually blamed on something that happened in the home. It's very questionable whether it wasn't an older person than the child that stood before me or sat before me. But just very, very minor. Hats off to our IT department. We do seem to have very good, first of all, we got a very good IT department. I think Jack Dowd does a tremendous job for this county. But, they seem to have very good guardian programs. So, any other questions?
I have one comment. I just wanted to commend your Virginia Studies teacher, having studied for my third and possible final Virginia Studies this year. 21 passed advance and 3 perfect scores. And that's not an easy task. The Algonquin, Piedmont, Fall region, that's a lot of memorization. I commend your teacher on teaching.
Yeah. Thank you, Mrs. Spudell. I meant to mention that, and that did stand out, and yeah, that's really exceptional. About a third of the kids really passed advanced, and so a few more failed than we wanted to. We got about 12 retakes, so we should be good there. Okay, so I'm going to again thank Mr. Lawrence for being here for us. Mr. Lawrence, thank you so much. Want to recognize May Gray, who is retiring. She's not here, but she's retiring after 40 years at this school, one school for her whole career. So I do want to mention that if you look at the post, you'll see an article in there about her, which is well deserved, and Accomack is in debt to May Gray for all her years of service. And now I'll turn it over to the livelier side of the team here. Ms. Payne has again started something. She comes to me and she has a big smile on her face. She'll say, "I have an idea," and it's like having a wife at work where you, what now, 24/7 energy. But anyway, she has started something that's incredible, a lot of fun, and I'm going to turn it over to her to talk to you about Girls on the Run.
Thank you, Dr. Good evening, everyone. I was very excited about the timing of our meeting here at Pungoteague because it was after our program of Girls on the Run and Heart and Soul. So Girls on the Run is the program for 3rd through 5th graders, and Heart and Soul is 6th through 8th graders. We started this, I serve as a site liaison, so I have a director that works across the bay, but it's great to be the point of contact here on the shore. This is our 3rd season, and we have 6 schools who participated, 2 middle schools, so Mantua Middle School and Arcadia Middle School for Heart and Soul. And 4 elementary schools. We're continuing to grow. This is a program, I know we've talked before in front of you, a program that merges physical fitness with well-being and how to deal with challenging situations and how to figure out who you are. So nobody can tell you more about this program than these ladies. Ms. Greta, if you don't mind just scrolling through, there's a lot of pictures. I just wanted to give you a view of kind of how it started. This program could not be possible without our coaches. We have 2 coaches, sometimes 3, at every school who are present. They practice twice a week for 8 weeks, so that's their commitment. And at the end, they run, walk, or jog a 5K. However, I'm going to tell you, these ladies had more in the tank than they knew because they ran so much. It was very exciting. But here tonight, I have past coaches and present buddies, coaches, girls who participated, girls who are supporting, but I have a student, come on, Ms. Kylie. Miss Kylie Stanhope was one of our girls. This is her second season participating, so she wanted to share a comment about the program.
Hi, my name is Kylie Stanhope, and I am in 5th grade at Pungoteague Elementary School. I am a Girls on the Run member. I am here to tell you a couple things about why I like doing Girls on the Run. First, I like to move my body and move energy. Girls on the Run lets me get a lot of exercise. Next, it allows me to encourage people in good time. When we practice, I like to cheer people on by saying, "You got this," and keep on going. Also, Girls on the Run taught me about goal setting and getting stronger. When I started, I didn't think I could run the whole 5K without stopping, but I did. I learned to never give up. I enjoyed meeting different girls in our school and different girls in other schools. Lastly, Girls on the Run was a really fun and exciting experience for me to gain more confidence.
All right, so this is our third season. We are looking forward to having another season. And one question we always get asked when we go around to the classrooms to hype it up and get excited about it is from the boys. Where is our program? So we are actually in the research mode of looking at a program called Let Me Run that is for boys. So more information to come, hoping to start that up. Because, you know, we're always looking for something new to start to give back to the students here. So thank you all for coming out to support. By the way, this is a small sample. There were 78 girls who completed the program from Accomack County. So thank you.
Thank you.
Is there a finance report? Finance report.
Good evening. I think you have I've been talking to Dr. Miller, she's giving me some examples, we have some ideas going forward on how we're gonna have a more comprehensive report beginning with the new school year. We're working with the ERP people to try to see how we can generate these reports, but for tonight's meeting, I think the very first attachment that you have is one that you see every single meeting, which was updated from the last meeting. It's just the progress of our federal funds. We stand, we're standing in good shape in order to meet our spend down requirements for when those funds expire at the end of September. The next thing that I have attached is where our final state revenues fell for the current fiscal year. And you will see that they're down approximately $830,000. And then we say, why are they down? Our ADM was 117 children less than what we estimated it would be. So I have some other attachments that I'll go into on this. The next one shows our average daily membership in graph form. This was part of your budget, and you see how it went down in COVID and then it leveled out. And for whatever reason, on March 31st, 2025, it went down 117 students. Dr. Miller and I have talked about that. It needs further looking into, because don't forget that we use current estimates for the budget that we're doing on our next year. We originally estimated 4,581. Then when the two health tools came out, the state's estimate for us went down. So we did reduce it by 20 students, but we still have to keep watching this to make sure that it's not too high as well. So that is something that I believe that we need to look into further and see if we can find out the cause of why our ADM has gone down. Is it that we have lost students to homeschool, private school, is it an attendance issue?
Madam Chair, I just have a question. So, virtual Virginia account for ADM?
They are in our ADM program, so it cannot be, it's not that.
Okay.
It would be homeschool, private school, left the area, or attendance. And then the last thing that I attached is actually from the December 17th printout for the budget, and it's where I showed you which revenue sources are ADM based. So you see when you lose 117 children, you see how many revenue accounts are affected by that, and you can take that right to the spreadsheet that I have attached with the individual line item revenues, and see that's where our biggest losses are. Actually, our sales tax went up 156,000 more than was anticipated, which is a good thing, but that would help to offset it, or we would be in a worse position. So we just wanted to point this out and say that's something that we need to continue to monitor for next year, as well as try to determine what the cause of the root cause of this loss may be.
Is it a trend or?
Right. Well, you see, we were pretty consistent, and then, out of the blue, we lost, like, just because of COVID. I mean, we lost.
How many students you say this year?
117.
117. And that's ADM as opposed to ADM average daily membership. Something like that.
I don't have a question, just a thought, I want to offer it in a positive way. Love the thought of more comprehensive financial reports in the future. I may be the only one, numbers is not my strength. Getting the reports in advance, getting them, timely in advance will be helpful, and it will, second and finally, be helpful to know what the preference is. Something that we want us to ask questions offline before meeting, or just like.
Well, the target is to have everything
Wednesday before.
So we will have, I will have all presentations and information that will be presented to the board at the meeting, 1 week prior to the meeting, and that will be uploaded with the agenda.
So we kind of switched around this time, what we put up on this board. Is that what you want? Are there any other questions?
Now it's time for our policy updates.
All right. In May, the ESBA put out several updates on policies. I have given each board member a folder with some of those red lines and additions. I'm going to try to go through some of these with you, just so I can head off some of your questions in advance. So you start with policy. Also, this is all based on Virginia code, changes in Virginia legislation that go into effect July 1. So that's the urgency of us getting in the first reading and the second reading at the next meeting to get them approved. So we start out with policy DJF. This policy has legal references updated to reflect amendments in Virginia Code 22.1-296.1 and Virginia Code 2.2-43311.3. Okay, this has to do with exceptions for contractors with felony convictions. Policy now includes exceptions to rewarding contracts to individuals convicted of violent felonies or crimes of moral turpitude, and then there are conditions that they would need to meet for us to provide them with such a contract. So you can see in the actual red line documents that I've given you, there are additions to the policy about a quarter of the way down. It's added in or crime of moral turpitude. A little more than halfway down, also similar language about moral turpitude. Towards the bottom of the first page, there are additions which set forth the precedents or set forth the conditions that an individual would need to make to be awarded a contract, such as
that their felony would not involve any kind of sexual molestation, physical or sexual abuse, or rape of a child, or solicitation of any such offense. That any individual would have their civil rights restored by the governor. And if you flip over to the next page, has completed all terms of supervision and has been released from supervision for more than 20 years. In the opinion of the school board, is an upstanding character and has demonstrated commitment to the public or community service and rehabilitation after committing all such terms of supervision. And lastly, the school board would need to certify in writing that such an individual meets the requirements set above. So the conditions are quite strenuous. If you go about halfway down, there's also language about prohibition of forced or indentured child labor, that contracts for goods or services exceeding $10,000 must include provisions prohibiting the use of forced or indentured child labor. And you can see all those additions to the policy there. The school board includes that every contract for goods or services exceed $10,000 meets the following provisions: that the use of forced or indentured child labor as defined by Virginia Code and in performance of the contract is prohibited, and that the contract will include a prohibition on the use of forced or indentured child labor in the performance of the contract in every subcontract or purchase order over $10,000. So that the provisions will be binding upon each subcontractor or vendor. For the purposes of this contract, or for the purposes of this policy, forced or indentured child labor means all work or services exacted from any person younger than 18 years of age under the menace of the penalty for the non-performance of such work or service, and for which such person does not offer himself voluntarily or performed by any person younger than 18 years of age pursuant to a contract, the enforcement of which can be accomplished by process or penalties. All right. EB is the next, oh, go ahead.
The other thing that this policy changed is that any contractors that we contract with outside of the state of Virginia, for instance, if we had a contract with the contractor in Maryland, they would have to abide by Virginia law. So that was the other big change in this policy. Before they could abide by the laws of the state, now they have to go to Virginia.
Broad general question, I think I have two, but I'll try to stop at one. So for each of these, we're talking about policies where broadly, as a board, we really don't have a lot of wiggle room. We're basically asked to line up. Is that accurate, or?
So these are the model policies from the VSBA based on legislation. They have the lawyers craft these based on the law. So there is not a lot of wiggle room. However, in some of them, there are choices, so you can make choices as to which option you would like to go with. And those are coming up, and I could just try to summarize them.
Sure.
Yeah.
So it wouldn't be anybody to ask the second question. So the second question, this first policy makes mention of the governor, and no politics. I'm just asking the question because I'm well aware that in the Commonwealth we will be voting for a governor. So I'm not asking anybody here that to respond from a crystal ball perspective, but my mind is telling me that all of this can shift again.
Yes, ma'am.
Like 2026 and all. Okay, so I was just wondering if I had the right. Okay, so it's like this is it for now, and it could.
Correct. All of this is based on legislation, so if the legislation changes, the policies will change. And these will go into effect, the laws will go into effect July 1st for most of these policies. So, right, so this will be the first reading, we'll ask for approval on the second reading, and the next board meeting. We'll let Mr. Johnson review these with you, and then when you guys have time to
All right, I'm just going to summarize each one of them a little bit more quickly than the first there. But EB, annual meetings it deals with school crisis, emergency management, and medical emergency response. Okay, so it states that annual meetings for school safety will be conducted by the superintendent or designee, and the school audit committee may meet annually with the chief law enforcement officer to discuss school safety. Also part of this would be that each safety audit must now include a review of the school's comprehensive plan for closures during a public health emergency. Cardiac emergency response plans. All schools must develop and implement a cardiac emergency response plan or an athletic emergency action plan that includes training, AED placement, and ongoing review. And all schools must conduct an annual drill to mimic such an emergency. Bleeding control programs. Subject to General Assembly funding, schools are to develop and implement bleeding control programs, place and maintain bleeding control kits, and have written procedures for these programs. And the kits must contain specific items which are laid out in the policy. And we're already ahead of this. We've already started ordering some of these, and they're going to be placed right next to the AEDs in the schools. Opioid antagonist procedures. Schools must have written procedures for procurement, placement, maintenance, and replacement of opioid antagonists. And all three of these must be included in the emergency plan. So an opioid antagonist is I believe it's referred to as Narcan. Yeah. Okay. EBB, threat assessment teams. Parental communication on student threats. So the superintendent must provide materials to parents regarding the recognition of and strategies for responding to student behavior indicating a threat of violence or self-harm. This information should be provided initially or as soon as possible to the parent. Threat assessment teams must meet monthly. Counseling, school administration, instruction, and law enforcement individuals will make up threat assessment teams. So this is a bit of a change. Even if there's not a threat, the threat assessment team is to meet monthly to discuss potential threats for every school. EBBA, emergency first aid, CPR, AED certified personnel. So for staff, training for emergency plans, schools with an athletic emergency action plan or cardiac emergency response plans must ensure appropriate staff are trained in first aid, CPR, and AED use. For opioid antagonist administration, at least one employee in each school must be authorized to by a provider, must be trained and certified to administer the opioid antagonist and be able to access the supply during school hours. EBBC is a new policy. This reflects new state code, and it has to do with opioid antagonists. A new policy addresses the administration, maintenance, inspection, and record keeping of opioid antagonists. It also requires the superintendent to establish regulations for safe storage and placement and outlines personnel training requirements. So each school must have at least 2 unexpired doses of an opioid antagonist, and records must be maintained to ensure that this is the case. EBCB, relates to safety drills, sudden cardiac arrest drills. These drills are now required annually and are to be established with the cardiac emergency response plan or athletic emergency plan. Also, bleeding control kits, I believe we've already talked about, but it's in this policy as well. Bleeding control kits must be presented during all safety drills, so they must be there on the scene. Okay? Stop me if I'm going too fast. FEA, okay, FEA requires that we have our HVAC systems inspected on once every 4 years, and the inspection report must be made public. GCB, professional staff contracts. This policy was updated to remove the duplication. Some of these are just minor changes. This is one of them. So it's just updated to remove some duplication. GCDA, exceptions to hiring individuals convicted of violent felonies or crimes of moral turpitude. There it is again. Are now permitted under the certain conditions, and they're the same conditions that were listed previously. GCE. Oh.
GCDA is one of those policies that has a choice, so I'm gonna let, Mr. Johnson tell you what we have in policy now. On page 4, this is the options.
Page 27.
Yeah, these are options that are presented in the GCDA. Thank you, Dr. Miller. Option 1, the applicant or employee must pay for fingerprinting, criminal background check, and abuse and neglect check conducted pursuant to this policy. The school board pays for option 2. The school board pays for fingerprinting, criminal background check, and abuse and neglect conducted pursuant to this policy. In option 3, the school board and the applicant or employee share the cost. Currently, when we're hiring, the school board is paying for this part of this, so you could stay consistent with that, and you could choose option 2 if you want to stay consistent with what we're currently doing.
What's the current price?
$37.
And do we have any sense, or is it too early to tell what other districts will do in this regard?
It's not split, some divisions pay for it, some have the applicants pay for it. Most of the time, the divisions are paying for it, just because it's so hard to find employees anyways. Making it easier is always a good option.
Would you all like to give us some input? We're just going to continue with option 2 and continue to pay for the background screenings.
Do you need a motion, or you just want to?
But we're gonna vote on it next time. I think continue.
Our recommendation is option 2. Yep, okay. All right.
Someone feels strongly different in a different direction.
All right. GCE deals with substitute teachers. Provisions for long-term substitute teachers between 90 and 180 days are now required to have a professional development plan for each one of these teachers. And long-term substitutes must hold a bachelor's degree and not meet the qualifications to apply for a provisional license. So what they're saying is if they can get a provisional license, they should do so. or have held an active professional teaching license in the past 10 years. GCL deals with professional staff development. Professional training requirements are clarified. I'll circle back around to GCG in just a second. Professional staff training requirements are clarified with effective dates no later than 2027-2028. Professional development in communicating with and supporting students with autism spectrum disorder may be provided annually for employees in regular contact with students. Limitations are placed on the total frequency and duration required of non-academic trainings for teachers. So in a 5-year period, teachers can only complete 25 hours of non-academic training because the teachers, do a lot of different PDs and trainings and whatnot. All right, so we skipped over one. If you are following along, we're on the G's. So GCG, if you notice, there's just some red lines, and there are some minor changes to the language. For example, they took out the term him, her, and changed it with such teacher. There's just some minor red lines and things like that in there. It's a real, if you have any questions about it, please let me know. All right, GCPD, this places limitations on the liability and or discipline for any employee who administers an opioid antagonist in good faith. So if someone's in trouble and one of our teachers takes actions, even if they're not trained, this says they cannot be disciplined if they're trying to save someone's life. Okay, we're on to the I's. I promise we're almost finished. IGAG, school boards are to provide a program of instruction for opioid overdose prevention and reversal in secondary schools, determining the appropriate grade level, opioid overdose prevention, reversal instruction, and at a high school grade level. And we also have, for this policy, been in contact with the local law enforcement for presentations with this, for like assistance with this. I'm talking it over with Dr. Miller. We recommend, this is one where we have to make a choice. The logical place for this is in health class, and we recommend grade 10 during health class. And that's what will be in the policy when we have the second reading. Okay. No. The Sheriff's Department currently does this in the 8th grade, where they just come in and they talk about opioids and overdose and how to prevent it and things like that. They show a little video and, things like that. IGAJ, there's no policy change to this, but the language added to a footnote encourages schools to provide behind-the-bill education during or outside of school hours. So there's really no big change to that, only a footnote. Yeah, we currently only have one behind-the-wheel teacher, so we provide it when we can provide it. Yeah. All right. IGBA, post-secondary transition and support services are to be considered and documented at IEP meetings. Also, IEPs must include language addressing accommodations and supports for students during emergency situations, including evacuations. Also, parents must be notified of a student's rights and obligations regarding dual enrollment prior to the 11th and 12th grade IEP planning process. All right, we got have another new policy, IGBJ. This new policy sets criteria for students in grades 5 through 8 to enroll in advanced or accelerated mathematics with automatic enrollment and a parental opt-out option. That's the part that's new, the opt-out option. Also includes additional enrollment pathways. This will need to be communicated on an annual basis, and a staff member will need to create this notice for us. We're already getting on top of it. JC, this is this is an optional policy, but it's a policy that is already in our policies, so I would just recommend that we just keep doing this. So this is optional language for school boards to permit enrollment of dependents of active duty military members who do not reside within the school division under certain criteria. So this is already in our policy. I recommend that we continue with this optional policy. Does anyone have any objection?
Which one did you already see, or except for computer system use, or did I get distracted?
All right, I apologize. Which one did I miss, Mr. Turner?
Right after advanced or accelerated mathematics, and stuff backside that page, except for computer system use, IIDEA.
Page 48.
So several of the policies are just updating legal references and cross-references. This is one of those policies.
Okay.
Apologies. JO. JCJ. Again, very minor changes to some of the reading, there's a couple of red lines there and some additional language. If you're following along, takes out a few. The policy itself deals with twins in the classroom, and it's just the way it's worded, different. It's not any real change to the policy per se, just the wording of said policy. JECR deals with legal references and cross references. I don't see any major changes to this policy. There is an area that we need to insert some language as to who may be eligible for some consideration for a student admission, I believe. And we will definitely have that buttoned up by the time we get to the second reading. Same for JEJ. Again, some JEG, excuse me. Again, some minor red lines. If you look through this, some minor red lines and some additional language to this policy that deals with exclusions and exemptions from school attendance. JFC. I believe JFC is just a footnote addition. I don't see any red lines in JFC. Do you have any questions there? Oh, wait a minute. Excuse me. It's a long one. There are a few additional words added to some of the, some of the policy on page 3, very minor addition. JFCD, the cross-references for this policy have been updated, and some words added in terms of, this has to do with weapons in schools, so they added a few of the slang terms for some of the weapons. JFCM, this has to do with student cell phones. Has to do with student cell phones. This is a big change. Of course, we all knew about the governor's mandate about cell phones in schools, but the big part of this policy states that no student, that this kind of goes against what we've been doing, no student shall be suspended or expelled solely based on the cell phone policy. Okay? So no student is allowed to be suspended or expelled just for having a cell phone on their possession. Okay, I know that we may need to revisit something.
Can't be pulled over for a cell phone.
Also, in this policy, there are some areas where we need to insert how we are handling this for elementary schools, middle schools, high schools, etc. JFCI deals with the student assistance program and substance abuse. And again, very minor changes. Cross-references in some of the policies have been taken out or added in. JHC deals with student health services. Again, there is optional language in JHC that deals with telehealth services and mental health therapy services. And you can see that on the first page there. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but definitely need to have some additional requirements that we can insert. And this is something that we've already kind of partnered with the Eastern World Health. So we're definitely recommending inserting this optional language for this policy. All right, JHCD, again, we have some optional language regarding seizure rescue medications in secondary schools. This allows school boards to adopt policies on administration and student self-possession with proper documentation. So again, we would recommend that we include the optional language. It just makes sense to allow someone to self-carry this type of medication. Also authorizes administration of opioid antagonists by a school nurse or certified employee. JJAG, this is the student athlete extreme health protection for safety and protection. It's a new policy that sets regulations and guidelines for monitoring and canceling sporting events or practices based on heat indexes. It requires school boards to develop tiered procedures based on weather and heat, establish additional procedures to prevent heat-related illnesses, and processes for reporting and investigating injuries or deaths. These policies are to be reviewed and updated on a biannual basis. And these are we already have these tiers have already been created. JO deals with student records, language added regarding the address confidentiality program where a student's street address is not part of their educational records. Also, there's a requirement to redact the foster parent's address from records provided to the student's parent when requested in writing by the foster parent. Okay, page 6 of JO, there is also a section that we will need to complete and make whole before the next meeting for you to approve.
We do have this list in our current JO policy, so we'll insert that there.
JRCA, student services, our student service provider use of student personal information. Revisions to incorporate changes related to student issued device and school technology provider. Previous contract terms now apply to school boards independently issuing devices with added requirements to delete and/or safeguard personal information during transfers of users. So they're wiping the computers clean before it gets issued to someone else. Also limits and prohibits the use of school-issued devices for accessing or monitoring activities like location tracking, unless specific uses or it is subject to a warrant.
This does not affect our filters, so if a student is accessing sites that they should not be on, we can still use our filter and that will get caught in the filter and we can investigate that. So it doesn't affect that. It just means that the technology department can't get in people's emails or track the location without a warrant.
KBA, this policy requires a FOIA officer training update to include online options, and any school board legal counsel who is also a FOIA officer must complete FOIA training. KGB, this is a new policy. KGD. Okay, new policy, notification of school-connected student overdose. A new policy defines school-connected student overdose and suspected school-connected student overdose. It mandates parental notification by the principal within 24 hours of confirmation or suspected overdose, including information about the substance, location, and also requires corrections if there are inaccuracies. Every reasonable step should be taken to safeguard privacy and dignity. KQ requires any person convicted of a violent felony or crime of moral turpitude who may have contact with students is not employed or contracted unless specific conditions are met. And I read them earlier in an earlier policy. LBD, this policy is clarifying regarding disclosure and limitation of information by parental consent for information provided under Virginia Code 22.1-254. It has to do with home instruction. LC is all about charter schools, and the charter school application is LC-E. The majority of the revisions are formatting for clarity and consistency with applicable laws. This policy requires school boards to include procedures for any charter school application process. That concludes my presentation.
I guess I'm about to recess. I don't see, you can't mention this and I missed it. There's some procedures we have to do, sir, around charter schools. Do we have samples or something, or this is a lot of work, so forgive me for whatever I'm missing.
I understand, this is not a new policy, so we will be reflecting what our current policy is and bringing it to you for the second reading.
Superintendent report.
So it's been a busy 2 days. Everything's went well. Staff has been wonderful. Everybody has been very warm. We had their day today. That was an excellent event. Northampton did not get to join us due to SOLs, but there was a bunch of kids there. For food. It was a great time, so I was able to go down there. I did get to check on, I know that there was discussion about the 4-day work week for 12-month employees this summer. And I was asked to check on some clock-in timekeeping programs. And so there were 3 of them that were mentioned, and so I'm just going to run down what I found on those as far as people clocking in for the summer hours. We did check with Power School, TCP Time Clock Plus. It is, it would be $74,000 to get, and it is a couple months to implement that, so it would not be set in time for the summer. We also checked on Frontline. It is $10,400 to implement, and then it's $23,000 to $24,000 a year after that, 4 months to implement, so it won't be ready. Clockify was between $4,400 and $13,180 a month, which equals out to $52,000 to $158,000 annually. So I didn't even worry about an implementation timeline on that because it priced out on us. So that's kind of where we are on clock-in and timekeeping. It's very close to summertime, so we may not be able to get that in place. It would just simply be, at this point, people sign in when they come in type deal. So that's where that's at.
Madam Chair, yes. So, I must have missed, the discussion, maybe I just don't recall an inquiry about clocking in and clocking out. The 12-month employees are considered just like our administrators, and to consider having them clock in and clock out seems like a step backward, particularly when I consider, if you look at the principals, for example, and I see them, they're out at basketball games and football games, so this idea of clocking in and clocking out as a professional, I mean, I would actually find it insulting if I were a 12-month employee. I mean, maybe I missed the discussion, I say again, but, and especially at these costs, I can see why someone might have been is interested in clocking and clocking out, perhaps, you know, like if there's a concern about accountability, I think there are ways to address that without having the tail wag the dog, so to speak, by making everybody clock in and clock out. Maybe I'm missing something. What am I missing? So who are we asking? The 12-month employees to clock in and clock out? Do the teachers clock in and clock out? I appreciate what I'm hearing, and there, well, I didn't, I don't.
Anyone else? Would you like to move on to the?
Like I say, I disagree with Dr. Johnson. We haven't discussed that. This is the first time coming up about 12 months for the summer schedule. And I agree with her. I'm a 12-month employee with the state. We got a comp time schedule. We don't have to clock in about that. I think it's a waste of money, especially now we're on a tight budget. I think it's a waste of money trying to go out and buy software to clock in and out when it's up to your supervisor to really supervise their employees. If the employees, the supervisor does it, that means the supervisor needs to be replaced. So I would recommend that we do not just try to get this software for checking in and out for some employees.
Well, they have action items here.
Yeah.
Well, it's for the schedule.
Oh, look, there's a mic on. I'm sorry.
That was, oh, it's. So there's a superintendent's report. I don't think.
Oh, you,
It's listed under action items.
yeah.
Okay.
Oh, you finished, Dr. Miller?
I'm sorry?
Was that your final report? That's all you giving, or you still got more?
That was all I have for right now, that's all that today. I'll have more for you next Sunday.
So the next up is the school board meeting schedule. Any questions about that? I don't see us actually getting to 10 year in October. I think the wind is usually bad, but we can leave that if you all want to leave it.
Try. I'll give you this stuff.
Okay, so just leave it as it is. Is
So
there a
I would,
motion?
Madam Chair, I move that we approve the school board meeting schedule as presented.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The meeting dates are set. Next up are the summer work hours.
My 2 cents, I've been on this board for 18 years, and for 18 years, the summer work schedule has always been a point of discussion and contention. Why we have to keep building this, I don't know. I don't think we need a time clock, because as professionals, as adults, everyone should be working the hours that they say they are working, and if they are not working, you have hours that you can use if you need to take off. So there should not be any lapses in integrity, credibility, everyone should be held accountable for what they're supposed to do. I want to say this is probably year 33, 34, that you all have had a 4-day work week during the summer. At least 32 years, we've been doing the same thing, and every year for 18 years, we've had to vote on whether or not you all can continue to do that same thing. I personally think that we should continue with the summer work hours as presented in Dr. Miller's memo, the Monday through Thursday from 7 to 5:30 with the 30-minute lunch. I don't know if I can make a motion to do that or not, or if anybody else has anything to say. Okay, well, very good.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
What question? So, I mean, I'm just thinking again, 30-minute lunch, is that standard? I came from an employer where, you know, I'm more accustomed to systems. I don't know school systems. I have not done the research, which is part of the reason I'm asking the question. Again, we're talking about 1,200 employees. What's the probability to get a lunch? Is 30 minutes what we've always done? I ask because I don't know.
Standard, to be fair, but yes, ma'am.
30 minutes, okay.
Yes, ma'am. Hey, you get breaks in there too, Dr. Johnson, you know, they're
Oh,
not
I
deducting,
didn't
a
want-
lunch is
I didn't
deducted.
want,
I mean,
saying to throw something at me, but that's.
No, I was
something
just-
else that when, in my experience, outside of school systems, when we specify 30-minute lunch, we typically
okay on the question. I'm okay.
There's a motion and a second to approve the summer schedule. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Superintendent's contract. Um, You all wanna, you all recall looking at this, or you want
Madam Chair,
Yeah.
can we table this until next meeting when we actually have the document online?
Why don't we table it until, we'll discuss, we can, discuss in closed session, and in the meantime, I will email it to you. We need to do that tonight. We need to take care of that tonight, so. We're not gonna. Everyone has the document in their email. I will resend it again. So everyone can look at it. They don't have to report their email. I will find it and I will send it to everyone in just a moment. The teacher salary scale. There is no document. I don't have one.
It's the same document that was presented at the last meeting. I have a few copies of, there's no change. I mean, it was on your, it was in your email or in the documents from the last time.
But we should have this on our board doc, so I know you're saying it has to change, but.
I have enough for everybody for 2 lives.
I appreciate that, but I'm just saying, you know,
Yeah, it has to be part of our record that we,
Yeah.
thank you. We appreciate your preparedness.
And my understanding is that the money to do this was approved last year. Or is this not the
We
same?
put it in the budget.
It was included in a document.
Okay.
Madam Chair, I move that we approve the teacher salary scales. Second.
Motion and a second to approve the teacher salary scale. There is a motion and a second. Now that it has appeared on the agenda twice, we can vote on this. There is a motion and a second. Is there a question?
Yeah, so, I know there was, emails feeling that it was advertised one way and presented a different way. And I feel there may be some teachers that are here tonight who would like to speak on that. I would like to think we could really have a say for the vote.
Yes.
I actually support that as well. Perhaps it's an error, but I think this is the meeting where the teacher, is that, we've got public comment at 10:01. I think this is the meeting where teachers.
Yes, yes, so everybody can see. Okay, we'll spend that time here close. Do that.
Yes.
Let's move it down on the agenda. No, wait a minute, can't listen. Friendly amendment. Make a motion to move those two items to the end.
Madam Chair, I move that we move these two items to the end of the, meeting.
Second.
Motion and a second, move those two items, the superintendent contract and the teacher salary scale to the end of the meeting. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So next up is school board member comments. Mr. Sarnell.
It has some things to say what I was thinking about.
Okay, all right, I'm gonna spare you this once. Mr. Neal.
Oh, I always get to go last. All right,
Tonight.
what I got to talk about tonight is the thing that's been blowing up my email, my cell phone, and everything else. And I'm sorry, I didn't know anything about teacher salaries, is these clear backpacks and water bottles. I have strong feelings about the clear backpacks, and maybe it's because I was in public safety for so long, but at the same time, I remember who I worked for sitting at this table. I worked for the to the safety committee for further research to see if there was anything different we could do. Because the folks that are calling me, going, I have strong feelings for it, but I come from a different background as most folks, and I'm glad most folks didn't have to do what I had to do for 25 years, I really am. But at the same time, I know who I work for. I'd like to see this. I don't want to do away with it, but I'd like to see it go back to the safety committee.
Okay. Mr. Whitmer?
Let's say a couple of things with the clear backpacks. I did some research of my own this past week. I talked to administrators, students, and some SSOs about it. From what I see, I believe that the biggest problem is the backpacks have too many compartments in them. And I think if we modified it to only maybe the limit of 3 maximum compartments, a lot of this stuff would go away. So regardless of the clear backpacks or a modified backpack policy saying that we couldn't have these backpacks that have 100 different compartments where the kids are hiding stuff every day, and it's harder for the SSOs to search all the compartments. As far as the water bottles, my personal opinion would be that they could bring whatever they wanted as long as they had no liquid at all. It's kind of like going to the airport. You got to dump all that stuff out before you go to security. I think, you know, the bigger Stanley cups are being used as weapons. If they don't use that, they're going to find something else to use. So I think we need to amend what we discussed. Like Mr. Neal said, go back to the safety committee and the clear backpacks. If you have a clear backpack, yeah, the kids are going to hide stuff in the middle. So you're only going to see the outside and the other side. It definitely gives a sense of safety. I think it does work, but the kids are going to find other ways to hide stuff. We already know that. So I think we need to amend some things before we make a final decision.
Thank you. First, I'd like to thank Pungoteague for welcoming us and giving us a little retreat here, basically welcoming us here at school. Thank you, the girls on the run. Thank you for going again. I'm also agree with Mr. Rupert about tabling this about me personally, I do not want these clear backpacks. I'm working with trying to get another company coming here that will make all this go away. Hopefully, we can, and plus, we will try to push this amendment back to the safety board. But I'm definitely against the clear backpacks, like Mr. Neal said, a lot of people's calling, and from my area, they're knocking on the door. So I just say we need to table this, and safety committee needs to check this out again. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor.
Well, I had a little bit of a different approach. A lot of people say you're going to talk the talk, you got to walk the walk. So I went into Arcadia High on Friday and watched and participated in the bag checks. We had an eventful day, but probably most people know that an issue had happened. So then after that, I went to Keg Tank, and I was able to talk to the people that were checking the bags there. And someone handed me some gloves and said, "Come on, help us." So I did it myself, and it's not an easy task. I was, by the end of it, you're sweating, you're moving fast, but the whole time my thought process was what happened to the student over across the bay bringing that gun into school. And so I wanted to make sure I was thorough. Some of the book bags you open up, a few pieces of paper, some of them look like they brought the kitchen sink. It's not an easy task, and I thank those that have done it and keep doing it. But people that I've talked to that are actually doing the work, walking the walk, do want those clear backpacks. They thought it's not going to stop, but it would be helpful so they can see what's inside the bags, but it's still going to have to be a thorough check. And then I've had some other people say that, I saw on Facebook and some on social media, that a lot of them don't want this. I think I kind of have to agree with the other people here on the board that I think we need to table it. I think we need to kind of look into it a little bit more. But I think we need to do something to help these that are checking the bags in every day, because it's not easy. It's not easy. It's truly, it's not easy. And, you know, stick your hands in these bags and you never know what's in there. Some of the gloves I got was all sticky and it wasn't pleasant. So, but I do think we need to really look into this because we need to help the people that are on the front lines doing this stuff. It's not easy. Thank you to also Pungoteague for housing this and awesome job that you're doing. So thank you.
Yes, congratulations, Pungoteague, on your scores and Girls on the Run. That's an awesome program. I'm glad it's growing and you're thinking about including the boys. That's awesome. And about the clear backpacks, I will say there are people who contact us, but they don't know what we know about what these kids are bringing to school. They have not sit through these discipline cases, and they are not aware of the amount and the number of weapons that come in the backpacks. And anything that we can do to aid, to make our schools safer, to make the safety checks more efficient, is a smart thing to do. And that's all I'm gonna say about that. Ms. Andrews.
I just want to say thank you to Pungoteague for having us here tonight. Welcome, Dr. Miller. We're glad you're here. I have two things for closed session, but one of the things that I did want to bring up in open session is there a possibility that we can come up with some sort of calendaring system? Because there's somewhere else that I wanted to be tonight. It was at another school because of another event. And I kind of feel like if I'm a single parent and I have more than one child, I have to decide where I'm going to go on what night, because each of my children may be at a different level in school. I don't know if that's possible. I know we had a school board meeting one night and there were like some baseball games and there was some other activities going on. I think somebody may be having a senior banquet or something tonight. Those are things that I want to participate in, and I know that, you know, parents want to do that too, but they have to decide where, you know, where their priorities lie when it comes to events.
Lord.
Just wanted to thank Pungoteague for hosting us tonight. I was very excited to finally be able to get to come to a meeting at a school in my own district. Thank you to Dr. Henderson for his pain presentations and for sharing some of the participants of the Girls on the Run coming up, and it was great to hear from everybody, and especially the very well-spoken students. Thank you.
Three things, probably sound like a broken record in terms of clear backpacks. I do a few things that I'd like to offer. First is, I actually think that this board, at a future meeting, needs to decide what our position is, wherever it lands on clear backpacks. I don't agree with sending it back to the committee. If I recall correctly, and I've been wrong before, so I'm open to correction, but the idea of clear backpacks didn't start in the safety committee. I'm on it. I think it started here, and I think that rather than, you know, pass that off to the committee, I think we need to decide what we want and put that in place. I'll live with whatever that decision is. I am not in favor of clear backpacks. When it came up before, because this is not the first time to my recall, when it came up about maybe 1 to 2 years ago, I didn't see, me personally, and I'm a researcher, I didn't find any data then, and I haven't found any recently that has me convinced that there's a good enough return on investment with clear backpacks. I think that what I have read leads me to believe that clear backpacks actually give a false sense of security. I can't give any details of what, but students are quite creative with how they hide things. And again, I say, I think that clear backpacks will give those, no disrespect intended, who are checking backpacks a false sense of, oh, I can see what's in there. We still got to search for whether they're clear or not. One of my other large concerns is that clear backpacks I've done the research, right? I have family in the system, and I have yet to find one that I think is sturdy enough to hold the amount of material that our students have to carry. They're too flimsy, and again, from a return on investment standpoint, I think I don't think it's wise to ask parents to have to keep buying backpack after backpack after backpack for little to no return on investment. What I'm really trying to say is I have not seen one school system locally or across the Commonwealth of Virginia. I haven't looked nationally. I've limited my searches to the districts around us. I have not seen anything that says that using clear backpacks would have resulted in higher levels of safety, right? I acknowledge that there are some pros. I'm on the safety committee intentionally. Safety and security is very important to me. Nevertheless, I will be voting no for clear backpacks. The second, Mr. White didn't mention, and I don't want to steal his thunder, and I know, Madam Chair, you may not want me to say too much, but we're attending a briefing on a security system.
Yes.
So there's some other things that are, there are other potential ways that we can address safety, period. I don't say it for comparison. My second topic is just to say that my health, and I don't just mean my physical health, has prevented me from showing up at places that I planned to be recently. I'll give one example, and I express regret for that. I just wanted to say it publicly. The example I'll use is the retirees. You all are so important. I don't know if folks will hear this directly or indirectly, but it is important for me to say that I was supposed to be there to celebrate with this year's retirees, and I simply was unable. And so going forward, as my health allows, I'm gonna try to do better to be at activities, particularly once I committed. I was simply unable to be at the retirement celebration. And then finally, it is my sincere hope, I'm going to state this, that I really hope that as we've been discussing online, that we will revisit this agenda format. I'm rocking with it and rolling with it, but the split format for the closed sessions, it just really doesn't seem to be working well. I really hope that, if I may be specific, Ms. Handy actually provided a fair number of suggestions about things that could improve our agenda, and I hope that, in the future, maybe we can revisit those really soon. That's it.
I guess my response would probably just be, I agree with Dr. Johnson. Clear backpacks, I feel the same way. The water bottles, I felt like Mr. Whipper did, that, you're not going to get allegedly assaulted with a tumbler or with a metal water bottle. They would use something else if they weren't using that. I don't think it's if they're using those solely as to attack people. I think that's an isolated case. Just happy to be here. Thank you.
Sarah Scott. Okay. Ed's gonna read the rules.
One, identify yourself by name and not-on-one address. Two, speakers are limited to 3 minutes. 3, individuals may reserve or transfer their time to another speaker. 4, specific personnel matters must not be initiated at a public meeting. 5, speakers cannot be abusive, threatening, or use profanity. 6, specify the nature of the remarks. 7, speakers who have previously spoken on a subject for public comment should not be allowed to readdress the board during the same public comment period. 8, specific questions should be resolved prior to the meeting by contacting the superintendent or the appropriate staff member. 9, anyone who would like to present a PowerPoint presentation for public comment has to present the presentation 24 hours in advance for review by the staff for appropriateness. And 10, all questions shall be directed to the chairperson at her discretion, solicit the response of the appropriate staff member.
Thank you.
6309 Smith Street in Chincoteague. I'm currently an English and history teacher at Chincoteague Combined School. I'm here to talk about the teacher pay scale. I'm considered highly qualified by the Virginia Department of Education. I hold 2 master's degrees. I'm certified to teach secondary English, English as a second language, family and consumer science, and middle school history. Currently, over 20% of our workforce has more than 20 years of experience. This is an incredible asset, and yet we're seeing signs that experience is undervalued due to the compression in our pay structure. This sends the message that time, dedication, and institutional knowledge aren't worth much anymore. This compression isn't just hurting morale, it's threatening retention. Colleagues with many years of service are considering early retirement or leaving for nearby divisions that recognize their value with more competitive pay. Retaining experienced educators is not just a budget line item. It's an investment in student achievement, school culture, and mentorship for newer staff. If we want to build strong schools, we must fix the compression in our salary structure and ensure fair step increases. I am the teacher that this budget was created for. I'm in year 11 in my teaching career. I am from Wytheville, Virginia, a small county in southwest Virginia, almost as far from Accomack as you can be and still be in the state. I do not have any ties to Accomack County. By closing the compression gap and continuing to offer salary that's competitive with other school systems, this will help retain teachers and recruit others to the county. It makes me want to stay. I've been welcomed into each space that I've stepped into in the schools, from Arcadia Middle to Chincoteague to the migrant program and athletics. I want to continue to be a part of this community. I want to know that my hard work, dedication to my classroom, and continued education is valued. I urge you to consider the targeted adjustments that respect the commitment of long-term staff while keeping our district attractive to new hires. Teacher retention is more than about money. It's about feeling seen, respected, and valued for the years we've already given and the years that we still want to give. Thank you.
Tracy Robbins.
It sounds like a silly thing, but I've been advised because of my husband's occupation, I'm not supposed to say my address in public. I wrote it down. Is that a problem for anybody?
Oh, because you're supposed to. Okay.
I'm so sorry. I did write it down.
Okay, sure.
Good evening. My name is Tracy Robbins, and I teach at Chincoteague High School. I've been teaching for the Accomack County for 38 years. First, I'd like to start by thanking all the board members for serving our schools. Your job is not an easy one, as it requires you to make some difficult and very important decisions. I do not make it a habit of speaking at board meetings. In fact, I've been dreading this for over a week now, but I really wanted you to be aware of some important issues tonight. First, are you aware an employee benefit was changed in the middle of a contract year without giving notification to our employees? Employees in our county were told that they had insurance and other benefits when their paychecks did not reflect the current premiums. Also, employees' leave hours are so inaccurate that in some cases employees were given an additional 20+ days with an exuberant amount of money that our county has to pay out. Also, it has been almost a year now that the employees in our county have asked to see an evergreen study that these employees were included in, and never to date has anyone shared this document with them. These employees just need to see the suggestions that were given to our county, not the algorithms that were used by the company to come up with these guidelines. All employees except for teachers were included in this study, and they would very much like to see what the suggestions were by the company that they can better understand the raises in which they received. So I would like to put it on record, I'm requesting that again tonight for those employees. I wanted you to be aware of these financial issues along with the reason I'm speaking tonight. I have made some copies of the information I'll be addressing tonight to make it clear and a little easier to follow, since I tend to be a little nervous and speak very quickly when I'm nervous. I am sure you have seen the data before you, but I'm not sure that you would have it before you this evening when we make some important decisions. I've served on the Superintendent's Advisory Committee for the last 2 years representing Chincoteague High School. During this year, Dr. Jack was acting superintendent at some of these meetings. He explained how the shortage of teachers nationwide was a huge problem, and according to research, one of the major reasons for the teachers was the teacher salaries. He explained how our county was competitive with our salaries at the lower end of our pay scale, being close to the state's average, but the gap widened at the top of our pay scale, making our salaries far below the state's average. I've included this illustration to show how we compare to the state's average, and you can see where the gaps widen. He helped to create a system for our county to become more competitive in line with the state's average, closing this gap. He suggested to raise the salaries to the state's average and add 3%. In doing so, it would encourage teachers to stay with our county and increase teacher retention. On more than one occasion, after asking many times about teachers with more than 34 years experience, I was told that these teachers would be getting anywhere from a 9 to 14% salary increase. I especially used the 34 plus years because I based it on the pay scale that all the teachers in our county was put into our contracts in which we signed this year. Even though I knew I had more than 34 in, I knew in our contracts it was capped off at 34 plus years. When debating whether to retire,
You can just, I guess when I talk,
well, she's going to give me the 3 minutes.
okay,
That's okay.
say your name and address for the record and yield your 3 minutes. Ms. Rod.
I'm Teresa Biggie, 8 Bagwell Avenue, and anyhow, I yield my time to Ms. Ross.
Thank you.
Well,
Sorry about that. When debating whether to retire or not at the end of this year, I decided to stay on since we were always guaranteed a 9% increase. It would really help my retirement benefits paid to me and could be as high as 14%. I also encouraged several colleagues to do the same since it would help them as well. I've included this current school year pay scale in the papers I've given you so you can see that it does cap off at 34 plus years. Dr. Jack presented the proposed budget to the school board, and later on February 27th of this year presented the proposed budget to Accomack County supervisors. On April 14th, the county's budget was approved. After following this progression, I knew I'd made the right decision to stay on a while longer. When retention bonuses were offered for several of my colleagues, they came to me and they were undecided whether to sign on again because they never saw the new pay scale for the following year. They were told that one had not been finalized and could not be shared. I began to get a little suspicious after all the budget had been approved already. Still to this day, our teachers have not been given this proposed pay scale. I happened to run across it on board docs. I've included this proposed pay scale in your papers that I've given you. Please notice that the newly created proposed pay scale caps off at 30 plus years. Please compare that to the current years that caps off at 34 plus years. Also notice that from the top pay scale level of 34 plus years to what is now 30 years, I, along with many others, will only be receiving a 4.4% salary increase, which is less than I received last year when everyone got 5%. I was shocked and very disappointed, but most of all, I felt very deceived. Even though those with 5 years experience gets a 4.6% increase, it is true that others will be receiving a 13% increase at 30 years, and well deserved. But you just can't arbitrarily cut off 31, 32, 33, and 34-year pay scale. I, along with other teachers, base their decision on retire based on their own numbers, your own numbers that you came up with that were in our contracts this current school year. Ms. Ellie stated that she wanted all employees to be more consistent and that even central office caps off at 30 years. Maybe that is a good thing for the future, but you cannot just decide to cut off those falling in the gap overnight. There is, however, a solution that would be fair and ethically the right thing to do if you want all employees to be capped off at 30 years. That would simply be to grandfather those falling into the years 31, 32, 33, and 34 years of experience by giving them the same percent increase as you're giving your 30-year teachers this year. The teachers will fall at 30 years this year to be capped at 30, and all the others in the future. However, the teachers that fall at 31, 32, 33, and 34 years would receive whatever the 30-year teachers would receive for the next 4 years. At that point, all employees would be capped off at 30 years. I would like to ask all the board members tonight to please consider this proposal. Please do the right thing and fair thing tonight. Please do not have anyone confuse you about talking about longevity pay or anything else. Longevity pay for 34 plus years was the same last year. I have one more minute, but someone else is going to give me their 3 minutes.
Yeah, only one person can do that.
Could I just finish my thought?
Finish your thought,
Thank you.
please.
Last last year is year longevity pay for 34 plus years was the same last year as it is this year. It did not help with our retirement. There's no retirement paid on this. I hope you would uphold what was told to your veteran teachers many times this last 6 months. I would encourage central office staff to please be more transparent, forthcoming with the information. And thank you for your time.
For all the teachers in the back, you mentioned the Evergreen study. The Evergreen study did not look at the teachers' salaries at all. It was, okay. It's classified in that. Okay. Kara Jeffries.
I just want to say thank you. It's fun.
Kara Jeffries, 7053 Chestnut Lane, Shingatig. I was just gonna yield my time to Tracy, but I just wanted to make a comment. It's a school night, and we're 45 minutes away from Shingatig, and I just don't understand, the point of having the public comments at the end, when sometimes the public comments are crucial to a vote. And I don't know who I have to talk to, but I would maybe like to see change the format of these meetings. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so next up is an action item for clear backpacks. Does someone want to make a motion about clear backpacks?
So again, mayor motion to move it down.
All right, we'll do that. So adjourn, the board will now adjourn the closed meeting.
Madam Chair, I move that the school board convene to a closed meeting for the purpose of 6 personnel matters for discussion as permitted under subdivision 8.1 of subsection 2.2-3711 of the Code of Virginia, consisting of the following: 1 professional appointment, 1 classified appointment, 2 professional resignations, 3 classified resignations, 1 part-time resignation, 4 status changes, and we also have 3 readmission cases, and 1 long-term suspension that we still need to do, as permitted under subdivision 8.2 of subsection 2.2-3711 of the Code of Virginia.
Second.
Thanks, Mayor. Before we vote, I think we need to close that time.
You need to make a motion for whatever you want to do with it.
I think we moved it on the agenda to vote on it when we come out of closed session. So we're going to vote that and the teacher's salary scale. We're going to vote on that. You don't think we can?
I think you moved the superintendent contract and the salary scale, which you haven't moved.
Oh, we did not
Yeah.
move it. Okay, so we do need to make a motion. You're wrong about that. We do need to make a motion about that.
I make a motion, we move the backpacks into after closed
Or
session.
do we want to table it till the next meeting?
Table it till the next meeting. Second.
Motion and second to move the backpacks to the next meeting. All in favor?
Aye.